Welcome to the show. I'm Victoria Turner, and today we have the most amazing woman here. She's an amazing woman winemaker, because we're doing a series on amazing vintners and vineyards of San Diego. Today's guest is Denise Clarke of ALTAPIANO Winery. Thank you so much for coming, Denise.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here.
Thank you.
Now, how long have you been in the wine world? I know that you were an HR professional out of corporate, and then you decided to go into wines. How did that happen?
We decided to plant a vineyard after the Witch Creek fire of 2007. We had recently gone to Italy in March and fell in love with the southern Tuscany vineyards, and my husband discovered Brunello, and 2,600 vines later we planted the Brunello clone of the Sangiovese along with Barbera, Cab, and Petit Syrah.
So you have six vineyard wines?
I have four varietals.
Four varietals.
That we produce on the estate, and then I purchase other grapes. Yes.
And how, the name of your winery is ALTAPIANO. Please,
Yes.
let's talk about that. How did you name it?
That was very interesting. So my husband and I first started at two opposite spectrums, and we looked at, he actually Googled what was the translation for Highland in Italian.
Because Highland is where you're located.
Correct.
The Highland Valley.
Highland Valley. And so this was the spelling, from what I told, of what he got. Now, a very good friend of ours, Jerry Cordiano, who's first generation Italian, told us that was not the spelling.
Not his Italian.
No, not his Italian. But in any event, it's we played on the piano, and our tagline is the music of wine, and we both fell in love with it. And the logo actually came from a dear friend of ours, David Billick. He was able to look at what Peter and I were talking about in terms of a logo and branding, and he knew I was a cowgirl, so he came back with this beautiful branding iron, and it's just the AV encircled, the AV inverted and encircled.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
And what was your husband going for?
Oh. There were a host of things, and none of which really suited us, but we were both, when we first saw the image that Dave came back with, we both fell in love with it.
It was just a question of time until you got there. And so prior to this, except for drinking wine, you had zero experience in the creation of wines.
I had zero experience. Everything I've learned has been on the job, and thank God for mentors. My first real mentor was Paul Calicarian, him and his wife Rosemary. Paul had started the Wine of the Month Club years ago.
Really?
And so Paul would call us over and have us bring out a glass to, he lived in our neighborhood. He'd have us bring a glass, meet him right in our parking lot, and pour us a great Pinot Noir. He said, "Young lady, this is what a great Pinot Noir should taste like." And that's how I started developing my palate, drinking a lot of different wines. And I had someone with way more knowledge than myself tell me once, never really dismiss a varietal until you have drank enough different interpretations of that variety. And I think that's true.
That's true.
Yes.
And that's what you planted.
Yes, we planted the Brunello Sangiovese. We absolutely love it. I call her Lady Brunello. There are so many aspects of the Sangiovese that can show itself. And, you know, Mother Nature each year deals you the play, and it's our job to give the best interpretation of what that expression should be for that varietal.
Well, let's talk about that. This year, we've had a number of strange rains that we haven't had previously. How are you dealing with that in your winery?
You know, actually, I think it's going to be very good. It's kind of reminding me of some previous years. 2010 and 2013 kind of comes to mind. For one, you have a lot of things that will build up in the soil, so the rain is actually pushing it out.
Like salts, for example.
The salts build up and so on and so forth. If you have some ground cover, you know, you're still going to have the nutrients that's going to put back in there. But we have a gentleman that takes petiole samples and soil samples for us, so we'll see whether or not we have any deficiency in our soil, and you know, based on his recommendation, make sure that we
add back.
fertigate.
Well, there's 3 ways to add back. You can add fertilizer, you can do mulching, you can do ground cover. What is
Sure.
it that you prefer?
You know, it just depends. You know, I've decomposed granite with organics, so typically hasn't been a typical year, so ground cover wasn't practical for the most part because we didn't have the rain. So we have always used it through, you know, fertilizers to add back to the soil if we need it. But we used to have llamas, so a lot of times we would use, you know, their byproduct and plow it back into, you know, the vineyard because it's all organic anyway.
You bet.
And
Been done for centuries.
It was a nice way of replenishing. But as I said, we have a professional. It's one thing that I know where my strong suits are, and I need someone to be able to indicate to me what it is that we need to do. Yeah, that's just part of the process.
I always say people need to specialize. When it becomes that complex, you need to specialize in it and let people do what they do so well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you going to invite him to a blending party?
When I blend, it's pretty quiet. I have one person that I trust, her palate. She's another female. She's actually a chef, and she's brutally honest of if that's what I need. My husband also participates, but he's only making taking the cylinders and making the sample of what we're calling out in terms of if it's a 95-5 blend or a 75-25 blend. And one of the things that we do, though, when you're blending, or at least what I like to do, we taste the straight varietal first. Okay. Because we need to have a baseline and understand what that varietal tastes like. And then I work from there. I've pretty much worked with the same varieties I took over in 2012, so I've worked with those varieties. I know where I want to pretty much go with it because I've been tasting it every 30 days.
That gives you insight that nobody else could possibly have.
And then, you know, there's the science and there's the artistry, but I think there's also an aspect of winemaking that you can't define. And
isn't that because it's a living organism?
It's a living organism, but it's just like a Picasso, or, you know, that artist has this eye or this reaction to what it is. What is that end result that you're trying to attain? And I think that is an aspect. And I've asked other winemakers who certainly have way more experience than I do, and one described it as being the it, and that's because it's not definable.
Right. They've dealt your cards, and now you need to play that hand.
Absolutely. And Mother Nature gives you a different card every year, and you just need to pay attention to it and try and stay as true to the expression of that varietal for that year and that season.
So if you've been doing this for 20 years, how has the weather changed and impacted on the wines that you're producing?
Well, we bought our property in 1997, and I was always just like a little amateur farmer. But the weather patterns have significantly changed. When we first bought the property, it was a lot of rain. We actually were building during the 100-year rains of that time. And I think that was in 97 and 98. It was a really, really wet winter. I haven't seen this type of rain in a long time. So there's a lot of things that I think are changing. Our weather pattern for the last 3 or 4 years has significantly changed. We've had the heat last year that was impacted everybody. I don't know anyone that didn't have a certain degree of loss due to, it was just like a blowtorch came through.
Oh, gosh.
And there was no way that you really could have anticipated that. We fared pretty well, only because we're planted on 6-foot centers with 5-foot cordons, so our canopy is shadowing that next row. But even still, I had some damage, you know, on some of our Brunello and some of our Barbera. Fortunately, less than 5% though.
But that's still a significant amount.
True. For a
Sure.
small, for a small vineyard.
If I was drinking 5% of your wine, I would be a happy, happy camper.
It's true. But you know, it's really farming. It's just farming. You know,
Basic
things are going to happen. You try and make the most calculated, strategic decision based on the weather report, what's going on in the vineyard, but sometimes you can't anticipate certain things.
Right.
Yes.
Just like in business, you prepare as much as you possibly
Absolutely.
can, and then you have to tap dance, and some stuff you just can't deal with.
Absolutely. The one thing that I've learned, you have to be patient.
So you and your husband both own the winery.
We do.
How do you balance that? I mean, many people can't live in the same household, never mind run a business together.
Well, yes, that's true. My husband, when I met my husband, he had a small hotel. So we're used to being in each other's space. He's a lawyer. We don't hold it against him. But Peter has a very bright mind. His grandfather was a builder, so there's nothing he can't build.
That's great.
And he's very astute at being logistic, and he takes care of course, the legal aspect of the business and the financial, which I can't do it all.
No.
So we each have our roles. Our roles have changed now that I'm making the wine, and I mean, he will tell you, I can't make wine. I can't even smell the wine. So,
But he can drink the wine.
but he can drink the wine.
And I bet he gets along very well in your tasting room with the customers.
Oh, the customers love Peter. Peter always has a joke or a story to tell them. And
And that's a valuable skill.
absolutely. And he enjoys it. He really does enjoy telling the customer about our journey and how we got there, and seeing people. It's a service industry. And so to be able to give people a really great time, because you're literally inviting them into your personal space. And so that's no difference if you were walking through my front door and I want to show you that hospitality.
That's charming. What are the days like when it's time to go out and cut and trim or pick and find out who your friends are, huh?
Yes. Harvest is, there's a lot of things leading up to harvest, because you're constantly, just about every day, you're walking that vineyard, you're tasting, you're looking, you're sampling, and you're just, you're determining it based on numbers when you're going to pick. But it's not just based on the numbers, it's also based on, what you're tasting and what you're looking at.
So do you test for sugars as well as just testing the grape itself?
We do. So we take a huge sample, because I have 2,600 plants. My Sangiovese field, I've learned that on my east side I have more robust, so it's a lot more intensity and more fruit forward, whereas it's leaner towards my west. And we discovered that by accident. Just a happy accident.
Happy accident.
But what I have to do, bringing in 2,600 plants, I got to make sure I've got a really good balance there. So I don't just test for the sugar. I also test for the pH of the cluster of the grapes, and we usually take in whole clusters.
Whole clusters, yeah.
Whole clusters.
So, well, it makes it easier to pick it.
It gives me a more representative of what's really going on out there. But there's still no substitute in tasting, because even though your numbers could be telling you one thing, your palate and and your sense of taste is telling you something else too,
That's really the
or confirming it.
Right. Well,
So
that's the bottom line.
right.
Yeah.
So those indicators are when you're getting ready to say when you're going to harvest. And traditionally, our Sangiovese would always come in around September 21st, but in the last 3 years, that had changed.
Really?
We were having harvests earlier just due to the weather patterns.
The heat.
The rain. Rain is not our friend once we're getting close to harvest. Absolutely not our friend.
Oh dear. How does the excess rain impact on the grapes when it's too close to harvest?
It pumps it up, so it dilutes your fruit. You can also develop bunch rot, sour rot, botrytis, which is nasty stuff. It's we're not happy if we see rain close to harvest.
That's a bad thing.
Right.
So how many bottles a year do you turn out approximately?
Well, I do it more in terms of cases.
Okay.
So I'm at about a 1,400, 1,500 case production.
Yeah, and
right
once
now.
that's gone, it's gone. So
Correct.
So
but
that-
each year, I probably harvest anywhere from 24 to 26 tons of fruit.
that's a lot of fruit.
It's a lot of fruit.
You have people helping, I'm assuming.
I do a lot of it myself. I employ 2 part-time and 1 full-time worker.
And how many acres is that?
I'm planted on 2.5 acres. I have a 5-acre farm, but I'm only planted on 2.5 acres
Today.
with 3,600 vines.
That's a whole lot of vines.
That's a lot of vines, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
especially for a small place like you. Let's talk about oak. You seem to be very well informed about different types of barrels and the wood that goes into them. And what do you like, and how does that impact your wine?
I went to a Garage Festival back in, I want to say maybe 2013, 2012, 2013. And it was up in Solvang. And there were these gentlemen that took a Syrah grape, had it in neutral oak, which is not importing any oak whatsoever on any influence on the wine. And then they put them in these different barrels. And that was a completely different wine. And just a light bulb went off. So I started playing with a lot of different oak. I've played with Kentucky oak. Your Coopers are huge. It's just like art. Coopers, it's an artistry to the
Cooper
Coopers.
being the
Coopers, the ones that make the barrels. So I've played with different Coopers. I love Kentucky oak on the Sangiovese with French oak. I've used Hungarian oak, Minnesota oak.
And how does that modify the taste?
Oh, they're just totally different flavor profiles. Hungarian oak, you get a lot of vanilla, but I also, with one of my Coopers, I get this nice little cinnamon with it. And knowing what your Pennsylvania oak, I describe it as mom's apple pie. Yes.
That's great. Nice little apple taste going on there.
Well, there's just a spice to it. There's a spice, and Sangiovese is known for its beautiful cherry notes, and so mom's apple pie definitely goes with cherry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
talk to me about the different types of wine that you serve. So if I come to your place and you have a dozen different things, give me that, the flavor profiles I'm looking at.
Well, we're known for our estate Brunello and our which is the Sangiovese clone, and the Barbera. So what's going to be on our tasting lineup is somewhat different than, we only serve 5 wines on the tasting lineup. Typically, I make 9 to 10 different varietals within a season, and they are the Sangiovese. I may do a regular Sangiovese, and then there may be something special that has happened that I put away for a reserve. Super Tuscans, Barbera. We make Aglianico, Primitivo, Nero d'Avola, Syrah, Merlot.
Oh my goodness.
Cab.
That's the whole
and
wine.
Petit Syrah. Yes.
Yeah, my goodness. That's a lot of different vines.
Yes. I had to think about it for a moment.
It's helpful to know a winemaker, because you have some really specific things that you set aside for special reserve events.
Yes, when you're buying your oak, and then when you're tasting your fruit, you have an idea whether or not is there something really special going on, and then you set that aside for your reserve. At least I do. This is just my little way I approach it, and I've learned to not become overzealous about it, but just kind of leave it alone and see how it evolves. And once that, I remember particularly making my 14 Super Tuscan. That was a very difficult blend, but it was really special. And that blend turned out being 45, 40, and 15. 45% of estate Brunello, 40% of our estate cab, and then the 5% of the Merlot. And it took me a while to let the cab settle down, because that year that cab was giving more of a rose petal nose to it. So it had to integrate, and I had to be patient. And I was patient, and I was patient. And finally, the rose petal of the cab settled down, and it went on to take a gold medal.
Holy cow, that's very impressive. I mean, for any winemaker to get a gold medal. And was that the Del Mar?
No, that actually was, I believe, San Francisco International.
So that's competing against winemakers around the world.
Correct.
So for a San Diego winemaker who's relatively unknown to compete against worldwide wineries is pretty spectacular.
I was happy. You know, when we take a medal, especially for me, it's a humbling, it's very humbling, because there's so much that goes into making a great bottle of wine. It first starts in the vineyard. So if I've done everything right there and I haven't messed it up by the time it's in the cellar, then there's your blend. So there's so much that goes into making a great bottle of wine. So it's just telling me, don't get a big ego, just stay focused, because next year Mother Nature's going to deal you another card. It just tells you you're on track.
That's amazing. So what's the most difficult thing that you, as a winemaker, that you find?
Not enough hours in a day. Not enough hours in a day, because there's so many moving parts. You're focused on the vineyard. What's going on in the vineyard? What's your weather report? Did I spray? And then you're constantly got your previous vintages. So you're either bottling or getting ready to bottle. You're aging your current. Anticipating what harvest is going to be like, financing, this is
all the farmers' woes.
This is a very expensive business. Very expensive.
Who was it who said if you want to make $100,000 in a vineyard, start with $200,000?
Yes, you need more than that. Yes, it's quite labor intense. It's you constantly are worrying about or concerned with, all aspects of it, because it's constantly moving. It's very fluid. So staying focused and keeping your eye on the ball is paramount. And then you have your everyday life, but you have to find that balance.
Right.
I don't think that you can stay creative if you don't have the balance of friends, getting together with your friends, having dinner. A lot of times I'm asked by my customers all the time, how do you go and do a dinner party and you've been on your feet all day? Well, that's something I really enjoy. I love having friends come over, and we open up a nice bottle of wine or champagne. I love bubbles. And you get to catch up with them. I have my grandkids that live with us as well, so that's amazing. I mean,
you're a very fortunate woman. So what's the best part of owning a winery?
The people you meet, the relationships that you build. I can't tell you how many folks that started out as, members or people coming up visiting the vineyard, and that relationship has evolved into a real long-term friendship.
Now that is a blessing.
It is. It really is. So we're very fortunate.
You are a very blessed woman. My last question, we have for our last 3 minutes, is you love music. So when you're blending, what music do you listen to?
I typically start out with Yo-Yo Ma. I love his cello suite. I think it's a Bach G minor. And then there's, or either I start out with Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata, because I'm trying to clear my head. And wine is a living, breathable organism. It really is. And I think wine and music go hand in hand. So I may start out with that, but I love John Mayer. I love Bruno Mars. You know, I love Barbra Streisand. So I may play the classics starting out, but and then I love country and western. So it just depends on what I'm doing. If I'm topping my barrels, you know, of course I want something lively, so something with a beat and everything. But music is very calming. And it certainly goes hand in hand with working with the wine, I think.
And what do you play on your tasting room?
We play a assortment of music, but primarily classics and smooth jazz.
The traditional.
Traditional, yes. I think that goes best with it. Yeah. I love Andre Bocelli. I mean, nobody has a voice like his.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody has a wine like yours. So in our last minute, what would you like the general public to know about if they come up to visit you? What should they know before they arrive? In 30 seconds or less.
If you come up to visit us, we're in the Highland Valley area. There's 7 wineries that you can come to wine. You can bring a picnic. I don't serve food. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sundays from noon to 6. I'm typically there, not generally dressed like this. I'm normally looking like a farmer. And there's several other wineries in our area that you can enjoy. The only place in Highland Valley that has food is Cordiano's. And all of them have beautiful venues.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being with us,
Thank
Denise.
you.
It's been wonderful having you
Thank
here
you for
and
having
seeing
me.
your amazing wines. This has been the amazing Vintners and Vineyards of San Diego. Our guest, Denise Clarke with ALTAPIANO. ALTAPIANO up in the Highland Valley. I recommend that you go out and try all the wines here in San Diego, starting with Denise's because she has music.
Thank you.
Okay.